Am I on? Hello, welcome back. My name's Zach. I'm the sparkling winemaker here at Domaine Carneros, and welcome back to the second week that we're doing our happy hours from the Jardin du Verre. It's a little chilly today, so we decided to use the fire backdrop. Today we're going to discuss the Pinot Noirs a little bit, and I have the 2018 Avant-Garde Pinot Noir and the 2017 Famous Gate Pinot Noir. So Pinot Noir is interesting. We have a long history with the Pinot Noir here at our estate. We were started in 1987 as a sparkling house, as many of you are aware, and the Pinot Noir just kind of started. The truth of the matter is it was an employee project, and in the beginning, Claude Tetager used to come and walk through the cellar with Eileen, and at one point he was walking through and he saw a few barrels of Pinot Noir that the cellar was making for holiday giveaways for the employees. This was especially noticeable to him because we don't use any oak in our sparkling wine. So a couple barrels sitting in the corner got his attention. So he obviously asked what it was. She told him. He wanted to taste it. And, so you kind of have to let the boss taste when they ask. She did, and he loved the wine. And he loved it so much that he wanted to put it in his hotels. And so that's really what the Pinot Noir, where it came from. It started from a couple barrels to Claude wanting to put it in his hotels to us starting to make it on a larger scale, and eventually we had to make a second building in order to keep the Pinot Noir and the sparkling wine separate. Pinot Noir will go through a second fermentation, a malolactic fermentation. Our sparkling wine, we don't want to go through that. It's much easier to keep them separate. So in the early 2000s, we built the second building, so we have a Pinot Noir fermentation facility and a sparkling fermentation facility. So here we are now. We make a couple different styles of Pinot Noir, and this will be fun to talk about these. They're polar opposites in some ways, and they're also along the same vein in other ways. They all come from our estate, all off of our grapes. But their expressions are completely different on different sides of the spectrum. Their oak is going to be different, their oak profile, the time in oak, the length of aging, as well as the clonal composition. So, without further ado, I'm sure you're here to taste the wine, and I hope you are anyway. So we'll start with the Avant-Garde. So the first thing you want to do with the Avant-Garde is put down your wine key. And because the Avant-Garde is a screw cap, so it's fairly easy to open, you twist it. Screw cap, there's a lot of opinions on the screw cap. My opinion is if it's a wine that is intended to be drunk at a young age, meaning within the first year that it's out, a screw cap is perfectly fine. If it's a wine to age, there are some people that swear by aging on a screw cap is okay, and there are different caps and there's different research, different oxygen ingress. You can go really deep into the screw caps, and and that really depends. However, for a young wine, a year or less, the screw cap is fine. For an age-worthy wine, I'm a bit more of a traditionalist, and I like the cork. So, little Avant-Garde for you. 2018. So,
cheers.
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 The Avant-Garde is, okay, so there's a spectrum of lighter to darker fruits that is probably easiest to describe as, you know, if you start on for a fruit forward wine, a red, you know, a younger fruit, fruit expression is more on the red side. You're going to start with watermelon, strawberry, red raspberry. You know, you might get into some cherry, some black raspberry, blackberry, plum. And so it just kind of goes from the lighter to the darker. And that's the spectrum that I like to describe. So the Avant-Garde, you know, is going to start a little bit more on that red side. It's a wine, again, it's a screw cap, which tells me it's intended to be drunk in the first year, which of course it is. We don't make this wine to age. It's going to be very fruit forward on the red side of fruits. And, you know, it's intended to enjoy. It's a perfect wine to just have, you know, I don't know, at about 2 p.m., say, or 5 p.m., depending where you are in the country. So the nose shows a little of that, you know, almost like a red raspberry flavor. It is light and playful, and so that kind of tells me that the wine is going to stay a little bit on the red. And it does, you know. I'm not getting watermelon per se in this one, but I'd say your strawberry, your red raspberry, even some cinnamon. It's kind of playing around in that on that side of the spectrum. Very fun wine, very easy drinking. Get yourself some bottles, send some to a friend, have a virtual happy hour. By now, you guys know the drill. All right. So, and I don't have a bouchon for still wines, but I do, you know, one of the well, it's a screw cap, for Pete's sake, you put the cap back on, right? If you have a wine with a cork on it, you put the cork back in if you haven't finished the bottle. But I have a nice little gadget here that I tried out a little bit ago and did an experiment with it. It's called Repour, R-E-P-O-U-R. Box looks like this. It's available on our website and through our usual channels. But and I also will say I received no free product for this plug. This was a completely I don't know. It was, I just did an experiment and it was very neutral. I came at it with, you know, there's a lot of gimmicks out there and I usually don't believe them. So I was like, oh yeah, sure, this will work. But what I did was I opened a bottle, actually opened 2 bottles and took a glass out and I left one, just put the cork back in it and I put one with the Repour in it. And what you do is you just push it in. You don't want to lay it down. It doesn't seal the bottle, but it, you know, they sell it as it keeps the oxygen out. And so 3 days later, I went back and tasted it, and I was shocked that I opened a new bottle. I had my Repour bottle, and I had the bottle with the cork. I was pleasantly surprised. The open bottle had obviously oxidized a bit. The Repour was extremely close to the unopened bottle, and that's after 3 days. I did it again at 7 days, and you know, it was much better than the open bottle, that goes without saying, and it was still fairly close to the fresh bottle, and I was really pleasantly surprised. I wouldn't recommend doing over 7 days, wouldn't even recommend going 7 days. I mean, who does that? Come on. But for a day, you know, I mean, again, let's be honest. If you have a bottle open, you're gonna drink the bottle. But say you finish the bottle and open a second one, I could see where that would come in handy to hold it overnight. You'll be good to go the next day to finish the bottle as new. So there, that's my Uncompensated plug for Repour. Let's move on to the Famous Gate, shall we? All right, now we're gonna need the wine key. So the first thing we wanna do is remove the top of the foil. You guys are all professionals. I don't think I have to explain how to do this. Also, I should add that if you have any questions, fire away. We're going to keep this fairly informal and informative. So if you think of anything that you want to know about these wines or anything else, go ahead and ask questions. We're also open to suggestions about the format and what you guys want to hear about. And so let us know and we will try to accommodate. So 2017 Famous Gate. This is an entirely different animal. The Famous Gate. Let's try a little bit of that. The Famous Gate is going to be a wine that we make in a very different style. We're intending this wine to be an extremely serious, food-friendly wine. This is a wine that is made to age as well. This wine gets, let me put that back right here. This wine gets, it's predominantly made of swan clone. And the swan clone is not a very widely planted clone for the simple fact that it's small berries, small clusters, very limited yield. And for that reason, most people want a little bit more yield out of their grapes. But Swan brings just an amazing concentration of flavors and depth of flavors, and it's just a beautiful clone. So this one is, the Famous Gate is every year made out of predominantly Swan. This year it's 80% Swan for the 17, and so it's going to really always be driven by Swan, but it's also going to be driven by a 45% new oak, 100% French, of course, but 45% new oak. It's going to age for at least 16 months in barrel. We're going to over vintage it. So for the 17 vintage, we picked it in the fall of 17. We fermented it. It sat in oak all past the 18 vintage, and we didn't bottle it until early 19. And so it gets a good long time in barrel, a lot more age. And this is a wine that will age for a great amount of time if you have that patience. I would say a rule of thumb, 5 to 7 years, easy. There's some vintage, and you'll have some vintage variation there. Some vintages go 10 years. 10 is kind of a sweet spot where I like to see what they're doing. And 2009, just the end of last year, even now, I was drinking some 09s out of my cellar, and 9 was just an amazing vintage, first of all, and then in a wine like this where it ages, it's really fun to come back to it. Of course, that requires a lot of patience, and so you're not expected to hold it that long. It is certainly drinking very well now. I guess we should probably taste it. All right. Okay, so the nose on this one tells us that we're moving up the spectrum a little bit. We're coming out of that red fruit, and there's also some real, I get some spice layers, and there's just a little bit more depth in this one as it's intended to be. So shall we taste it? Okay, that one right off the bat, I get the black cherries, almost a boysenberry. We have that spice, that baking spice in the middle, which is a classic Carneros. That's what we get in in almost all of our Pinots, kind of an anise, a clove, and then, a very supported by the oak and just carries just a length that, I can still taste it, and that's really great. That's kind of what you want. This, pairs well with food, with dinner, goes great with Moroccan lamb shank. That's one of my favorite. It'll pair with whatever you would usually put your Pinot with, whatever your preference is, but the classic Pinot pairings, and lamb shank is certainly one of those. That's really the wines. Do we have any questions?
We do. Richard would like to know what your favorite Pinot is from the current vintage.
Well, they're all kind of on different vintages. One of the the Famous Gate the current is the 17. As it's made to age a little longer, we also age it longer ourselves. The Avant-Garde is the 18. My favorite, I go to the Famous Gate. Like I said, I get the Famous Gate, and I make sure to always put some bottles back so I can revisit it years down the road. And it's a lot of fun to remember a vintage, remember what happened in that vintage 7 years later, even 10 years later, and to drink it. And so the Famous Gate is a wine that drinks now but will hold. Anything else? All right. Well, we're trying to keep it a little shorter this time, and I think we succeeded. So, in summation, 2018 Avant-Garde, very fruit-forward, easy drinking, fun on your porch, not watching people walk by kind of wine. Because there's nobody out there. 2017 Famous Gate, a more food-centric wine with some ageability. These are both available. You have our phone number. If you don't, it's available. You can find it at domaincarneros.com, and also available on our web sales, domaincarneros.com, or email.
See us next week.
Yeah, I'll see you guys in 1 week for another happy hour. Thanks so much, and stay safe, stay sane. Cheers.